Hi everyone. So welcome back and from today we'll be starting a series of Python projects that you can do, and the first project will be very simple and it is targeted entirely towards beginner who have just begun coding in Python, and it would be a super simple project, and we'll tend to learn some things along the way like how to iterate over dictionary and things like that. So let's get started. So as you can see, I have this website open which is 1337.me, and if you don't already know, this is a LeetSpeak site. And what do I mean by LeetSpeak? So if you enter any of the text, like let's say I want to do I love Techie Zilla, right? So as you can see, as I'm typing, this text is entirely changed in something, right? And if we observe very diligently, we can see that I is converted to 1 because I looks like 1, right? And the O is converted to a 0 because technically it is very similar looking, right? So for example, T gets converted into 7 and so on and so forth. So just to give you a better idea, let's type in lead here. So if I type lead gets converted into 1337, and hence the name of this website is 1337.me. So what we are going to do today is basically make this simple Python program which can take a text as input and then convert it into a lead speak, right? So let's get started. All right, let's get started with coding. So the very first line that we'll be going to input is the shebang. And what this particular line does is it basically tells the OS that, okay, if this is an executable file, how do you try to run it, right? So basically we'll give the path of the interpreter here. So what we'll do is we'll say the path of our interpreter is user bin env and python. So this is the path of the Python interpreter. So what this particular line will do is basically if I, for example, convert this particular file as executable, so I will do it this on command line, and I'll basically say that okay, um, let's do a chmod, give an executable flag in here, and then we say okay, LeetSpeak 1337.py. I want to make this as an executable file, and if you notice, this particular file itself is LeetSpeak file, right? So we are talking about this file right here. Once we do that, instead of running this file as this command, we can simply do like this, right? So we are saying just execute this file, right? And how does the OS know that, okay, how do it runs this file, right? This can be a text file, this can be anything, right? This can be a bash file. So how does the OS come to know that, okay, I have to run it through Python? And that is not by this extension of .py. It is because of the shebang, which is the very first line of your file. So it will go in this particular file, look for the very first line and see if there is a shebang mentioned, and it would try to execute it through this Python interpreter, right, which is in this path. So now let's get started with the original project. So what we'll do is we'll first accept an input from the user, right? So we'll say let's say text is, let's input, and we'll say please enter text, right? And then what we can do is we'll create a mapping of the characters in English to the characters in LeetSpeak. So let's do that. And I think the perfect data structure for that would be a dictionary, because we can maintain a key value pair, right? So what we'll do is let's define that mapping. So we'll say, let's say LeetSpeak mapper, and let's say A is 4, uh, B looks like an 8, so we'll give it an 8, E looks like a 3, L looks like a 1, and an O looks like a 0, right? And an S looks like a 5, a T looks like a 7. And yeah, that's it. So what we need to do is we need to iterate over all these characters and replace those characters in our original input text, right? So let's do that. So in order to iterate over the dictionary, we'll say for key comma value in our LeetSpeak mapper, we need its items. So now we have the key, right? So for each iteration of the loop, the key will be this part and the value will be this part. But remember, we have given it as an integer, right? And for text replacement, an integer won't work. So there are two things you can do. Either define it as a string. So you say basically here that this maps to a string for, or instead just convert it explicitly to a string in the loop itself, right? And that's what we are going to do here. So we'll say that if key in text, which means that we are looking for this particular key, right? So if our input text has an A, then we need to replace the A with the string representation of 4. So what we'll do is we'll say our original text will now become the output of whatever we get through the text replace function, and the first argument of this will be a key, which means we want to replace the particular key, right? And the second portion is what we want to replace it with. So we want to replace it with the value itself, right? And we can't do value like this because it would give us an error, right? Since this is an integer. So what we'll do is we have to typecast it into a string. So we'll typecast this, and now we'll say that okay, let's print the output, right? So we'll say LeetSpeak output, and let's output the text. We'll save this file, we'll come here, try to execute this file, and it says please enter a text, right? So let's type in lead, and it gives us 1337. So you might think that we are done, but there are a couple of improvements that we can still do here, right? And let me show it to you via an example. So what we're gonna do is let's say I type in capital lead, right? Or maybe like let's do a small e here and then t, right? So if you see here, only the small letters or small characters are being converted, right? And not the capital ones. So let's just fix it in our code. So what we'll do is we'll say if we get it in text.lower, what we'll do is we're gonna replace the text via this particular key, and we can also replace it through the capitalized version itself. So what we'll do is we'll just lower the text itself and then replace it. Now this is a bit of a nuisance here, right? Because we might not want to change the text itself. So a better way would be not to do like this, but let me show you the output of this, right? So let's do this, and if you see, it gets converted into 1337 in this particular case because it already had all those characters. But let's try it with something else. So I love Python. Now see, I is not converted, right? It just got in small case, right? And that wasn't something we intentionally wanted to do. So we can't just do it like this, right? So let's modify this code a little bit. Let's remove it, and what we'll do is if we have the lower version as well, what we'll do is we'll convert the key into uppercase and then replace it with that particular value, right? Because the key itself we know is already in lowercase, right? So we also try to replace the uppercase version as well, right? So we'll do it like this. And if you see now, I didn't get converted, but L was converted into 1, O into 0, and so on and so forth. But now let's just you know refactor the code a little bit. We can just chain it across like this, and this would still work. Ta-da! And that's it, guys. We have this LeetSpeak program, right? So what I want to do next for you is modify this LeetSpeak mapper and add a couple of more statements, make it a bit more complicated, like replacing one particular character with multiple characters and so on and so forth. There's a bit of learning involved, and this particular project was highly targeted towards beginner. So from the next time, what we will be doing is raise the level a little bit, try to do some intermediate level projects in which more learning is involved. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.